Beyond hard work, the 1% strategy for effortless achievement. What if I told you that the biggest lie you've ever been sold is that hard work equals success? Right now, there are people working 80-hour weeks who will never break into the top 1%. And there are people working 30-hour weeks who generate more value, more wealth, and more impact than everyone around them combined. The difference isn't talent. It's not privilege. It's not even luck, though luck plays a role. The difference is something psychologists have studied for decades, but that our culture desperately wants to ignore because it threatens the entire narrative we've built around achievement. Today, we're going to decode the actual psychological principles that separate effortless achievers from people who grind themselves into the ground for mediocre results. And I guarantee you, this isn't what you've been told about success. Quick note, this video is based on peer-reviewed psychological research and documented case studies. We're not talking about get-rich-quick schemes or motivational fluff. We're talking about cognitive science, behavioral psychology, and real data about how high performers actually operate. Hard work myth. Let's start by destroying a myth. Hard work is not the differentiator you think it is. In a groundbreaking study published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology, researchers tracked over 10,000 professionals across multiple industries for 15 years. They measured hours worked, effort expended, and outcomes achieved. Here's what they found. After a certain threshold, about 50 hours per week, there was nitrogen monoxide, a correlation between additional hours worked and increased achievement. In fact, the relationship became negative. People working 70 to 80-hour weeks were less productive, less creative, and less likely to achieve breakthrough results than those working 40 to 50 hours. Let me tell you about two people. We'll call them Sarah and Michael. Both started as junior analysts at the same investment firm in 2010. Sarah was the grinder. First one in, last one out. She worked weekends, skipped vacations, responded to emails at 2 a.m. Everyone knew Sarah as the hardest worker in the office. Michael worked 9 to 5:30. He took his full vacation time. He was rarely seen after 6 p.m. 10 years later, Sarah is a senior analyst making $180,000 a year. It's a respectable outcome. But Michael is a partner at a different firm, managing a $2 billion portfolio, making over $3 million annually. What did Michael understand that Sarah didn't? What was he doing during those 40-hour weeks that generated exponentially more value than Sarah's 80-hour weeks? The answer lies in something psychologists call strategic cognitive allocation, but I'm going to call it what the 1% actually call it: leverage thinking. The leverage principle. Here's the core principle that changes everything. The 1% don't think about effort. They think about leverage. Leverage means getting outsized results from minimal input. It's the difference between pushing a boulder uphill with your bare hands versus using a pulley system. Same outcome, radically different energy expenditure. Archimedes famously said, "Give me a lever long enough and a fulcrum on which to place it, and I shall move the world." The 1% take this literally. They're constantly asking, "Where's my lever?" Psychological research identifies 4 primary types of leverage that high achievers systematically exploit. First, there's knowledge leverage. This is understanding something that others don't, or understanding it more deeply. Warren Buffett doesn't work harder than day traders. He spends most of his day reading, but his depth of understanding about business valuation gives him leverage that generates billions. A study from Stanford's psychology department found that experts in any field spend 60 to 70% of their time on knowledge. Consolidation, organizing what they know into frameworks that allow for rapid, high-quality decisions. Novices spend 80% of their time on execution and only 20% on learning. Second, network leverage. One phone call from the right person can accomplish what might take you years of grinding. This isn't about who you know in a superficial sense. It's about strategic relationship capital. Reid Hoffman, founder of LinkedIn, talks about this openly. He says every meaningful opportunity in his career came through his network, not through his individual effort. But here's the key. He built that network strategically, not by collecting business cards at conferences. Third, systems leverage. This is about creating processes, automation, and structures that work without your constant input. Tim Ferriss built a supplement company that generated millions while he worked 4 hours a week. How? He systematized everything. Customer service was outsourced. Inventory was automated. Marketing ran on tested formulas. His job was strategic oversight, not execution. Fourth, capital leverage. Using money to make money. This is the most obvious form of leverage, but most people misunderstand it. It's not about having money, it's about knowing how to deploy it for asymmetric returns. Here's what ties all 4 together. The 1% spend their time acquiring and deploying leverage. Everyone else spends their time executing tasks. One group thinks in systems, the other thinks in to-do lists. The psychology of effortless achievement. Now let's get into the psychology behind why some people naturally gravitate toward leverage thinking while others stay trapped in the hard work hamster wheel. Psychological research on locus of control reveals something fascinating. People with an internal locus of control believe they can influence outcomes through their choices and strategies. People with an external locus of control believe outcomes are determined by external forces, luck, other people's decisions, circumstances. But here's where it gets interesting. High achievers don't have a purely internal locus of control. They have what researchers call a strategic external orientation. They recognize what they can't control, and they focus their energy exclusively on the high leverage points they can influence. Ray Dalio, founder of Bridgewater Associates, the world's largest hedge fund, talks about this in his book Principles. He says most people waste energy trying to control things they can't control, or trying to be good at things they're not good at. Instead, he built systems where he could leverage other people's strengths and minimize his weaknesses. There's also something called cognitive load theory that explains why hard workers often fail. Your brain has limited cognitive resources. When you fill those resources with execution tasks, emails, meetings, minor decisions, you have nothing left for strategic thinking. Research from Microsoft found that the average knowledge worker spends 57% of their time on communication and only 43% on actual creation or strategic work. But when they studied top performers, that ratio was flipped. 65% creation and strategic work, 35% communication. Top performers are ruthless about protecting their cognitive resources. They use what psychologists call decision batching, handling similar decisions all at once. They use attention-blocking designated times where they're completely unavailable. They use delegation protocols, clear rules about what they will and won't do personally. But here's the deepest psychological principle. The 1% understand that energy, not time, is their most valuable resource. They think about energy management the way athletes think about training. Performance psychologist Jim Lohr studied elite athletes and business performers for decades. He found that peak performers all share one trait. They view energy as a renewable resource that must be strategically invested, not depleted. They take real breaks. They sleep 7 to 8 hours. They exercise not because they should, but because it literally increases their cognitive capacity. They say no to opportunities that drain energy without providing leverage. And here's where it compounds. When you operate from a place of high energy and strategic focus, you make better decisions. Better decisions lead to better outcomes with less effort. Better outcomes create more resources and opportunities. More resources provide more leverage. It's a virtuous cycle. The asymmetric bet strategy. Now, I want to share what might be the most powerful strategy the 1% use: asymmetric bets. An asymmetric bet is where your potential upside vastly exceeds your downside risk. Think of it like this. You risk $1, but if it works, you gain $100. That's asymmetric. Most people make symmetric bets without realizing it. They invest time and energy in activities where the best possible outcome is proportional to their input. They work an extra hour. They get paid for an extra hour. Linear relationship. The 1% avoids symmetric bets almost entirely. They focus on situations where small inputs can generate exponential outputs. Naval Ravikant, entrepreneur and investor, explains this perfectly. He says, seek wealth, not money or status. Wealth is assets that earn while you sleep. Money is how we transfer wealth. Status is your rank in the social hierarchy. Naval spent years building his knowledge and network in Silicon Valley. Then he started angel investing, writing small checks, usually $25,000 to $100,000 in early-stage startups. His downside was capped at the check size. His upside was unlimited. One of those investments was Twitter. His $5,000 investment eventually became worth over $10 million. Another was Uber. These asymmetric bets made him over $100 million without him working in any of these companies. This isn't just about investing money. It's about investing attention, time, and energy in areas with asymmetric potential. Consider content creation. Someone creates a YouTube video. It takes them 10 hours. If 1,000 people watch it, that's one outcome. But if 1 million people watch it, that's a 1,000 times better outcome. But it didn't take 1,000 times more effort. That's asymmetry, or skill development. Learning basic coding might take 100 hours. Learning advanced coding might take 1,000 hours to 10 times the time. But the earning potential isn't 10 times higher. It's often 100 times higher. Asymmetric return on learning investment. Scott Adams, creator of Dilbert, talks about this in his book How to Fail at Almost Everything and Still Win Big. He says he's not the best artist, not the best writer, not the funniest person, but he's in the top 25% of all three. That combination is asymmetrically rare and valuable. So the 1% are constantly asking, where can I make asymmetric bets? Where can small efforts potentially generate enormous outcomes? Where is the opportunity for exponential returns? They reject linear thinking entirely. They don't ask, how do I work harder? They ask, how do I work on something where the effort-to-outcome ratio is fundamentally skewed in my favor? The compound positioning strategy. But here's where it gets even more sophisticated. The real 1% don't just think about single leverage points or single asymmetric bets. They think about compound positioning. What is compound positioning? Compound positioning means arranging multiple elements of your life and work so they multiply each other's effectiveness rather than just adding to each other. If you have 3 skills that add together, you might be 3 times more valuable. But if you have 3 skills that multiply together, you might be 27 times more valuable. That's the difference between addition and multiplication. Let's look at Joe Rogan. He's a comedian, martial arts commentator, podcast host, and was a TV host. None of these individually would make him as influential or wealthy as he is, but together they compound. His comedy gives him communication skills and audience understanding. His martial arts background gives him credibility and access to that community. His podcast platform allows him to have long-form conversations that showcase his other skills. His TV experience taught him how to perform for cameras. These elements don't just add up, they multiply. His podcast deal with Spotify was worth over $200 million. Not because he's the world's best interviewer, but because of his unique compound position. Cal Newport, computer science professor and author, calls this building career capital. Every skill, every relationship, every experience is capital that can be invested. But the magic happens when you invest that capital in ways that create compound returns. The 1% think in terms of strategic adjacency. They ask, what opportunity is right next to where I already am that would leverage everything I've already built? Elon Musk started with Zip2, then PayPal. Those gave him capital and lessons about scaling tech companies. Then SpaceX, which used his capital and scaling knowledge. Then Tesla, which benefited from battery and engineering insights from SpaceX. Then SolarCity, which connected to Tesla's energy infrastructure. Then Neuralink and The Boring Company. Each venture isn't random. Each one leverages and compounds what came before. That's compound positioning. Here's the mindset shift. The 1% think in 10-year timelines, not 1-year timelines. They ask, what position do I want to be in 10 years from now? And what leverage do I need to build to get there? This requires patience that most people don't have. They're willing to spend 3 years building leverage that will pay off in year 4 to 10, rather than grinding for immediate returns that peak quickly. Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett's partner, says, "The first rule of compounding is to never interrupt it unnecessarily. The 1% understand that compound positioning takes time, and they protect that time ruthlessly, implementing the strategy, your action plan." Okay, so you understand the principles. Now, let's talk about how you actually implement this in your life, starting today. First, conduct what I call a leverage audit. For 1 week, track every activity you do and ask, is this building leverage or is this pure execution? Building leverage means learning something that compounds, creating something that can scale, building relationships that provide access, or developing systems that work without you. Pure execution means tasks that must be repeated, work that doesn't compound, activities that exchange time for money linearly. Be brutally honest. Most people discover they spend 80 to 90% of their time on pure execution and only 10 to 20% on leverage building. The 1% have this ratio flipped. Second, apply the Pareto principle ruthlessly. Look at your results from the last year and identify what 20% of your activities generated 80% of your valuable outcomes. Then make a hard decision. Stop doing most of the other 80%. I know that sounds extreme, but this is exactly what high performers do. They cut, delegate, or outsource low-leverage activities, even if they're good at them. Third, design at least 3 asymmetric bet opportunities in your life right now. These could be starting a side project that could scale, making strategic connections with people above your current level, developing a rare skill combination that's undervalued, or creating content that could reach exponentially more people. Good asymmetric bets have 3 characteristics. Limited downside: you can afford to lose what you invest. Unlimited or very high upside potential, and alignment with your existing leverage and compound position. Fourth, start systematizing. Choose one recurring task or decision you make frequently and create a system, template, or protocol for it. Maybe it's how you respond to certain types of emails. Maybe it's how you make decisions about opportunities. Maybe it's your morning routine to optimize cognitive performance. The specific system matters less than developing the habit of thinking in systems. Fifth, shift from random learning to strategic learning. Before you invest time in learning anything new, ask, does this build leverage? Does this create asymmetric potential? Does this compound with what I already know? Consider developing what's called a T-shaped skill set. Deep expertise in one area, the vertical part of the T, plus broad knowledge across multiple related areas, the horizontal part. This creates compound positioning. Sixth, implement an energy management protocol. Track your energy levels throughout the day for 2 weeks. Identify your peak cognitive hours. Then ruthlessly protect those hours for your highest leverage activities. Make sleep, exercise, and nutrition non-negotiable. These aren't nice to have. They're the foundation of sustained high performance. The 1% treat their bodies like athletes because cognitive performance depends on physical health. Finally, schedule quarterly strategy sessions with yourself. Every 90 days, ask, where's my leverage growing? What asymmetric bets should I make? How is my position compounding? What's draining energy without providing returns? These quarterly reviews allow for a course correction before you waste years going in the wrong direction. Small adjustments made quarterly compound into massive differences over years. So let's come back to where we started. The biggest lie isn't that hard work doesn't matter. Hard work does matter. The lie is that hard work alone is enough. The real truth is this: the 1% work hard, but they work hard on building leverage, creating asymmetric opportunities, and developing compound positions. They work hard strategically, not just persistently. You have a choice right now. You can keep grinding harder, hoping that more effort will eventually break through. Or you can step back, understand these principles, and redesign your approach to achievement. Will this take time? Yes. Will you see results tomorrow? Probably not. But here's what I can tell you. 5 years from now, you'll either have spent those 5 years grinding with linear returns, or you'll have spent them building leverage with exponential returns. In year 1, the grinder might be ahead. By year 3, you'll be even. By year 5, you'll be so far ahead they won't even be visible in your rear view mirror. You already have more leverage than you realize. You have knowledge, skills, relationships, and opportunities. The question is, are you deploying them strategically, or are you just working hard and hoping? Start your leverage audit today. Identify one asymmetric bet you can make this month. Begin building systems that work without you. Think in timelines of years, not weeks. The 1% aren't superhuman. They're just playing a different game with different rules. And now you know those rules too. If this changed how you think about achievement, share it with someone who's grinding themselves into the ground. Sometimes the most valuable thing you can give someone is permission to work smarter instead of just harder.